All right. Third time's the charm, hey? Let's see if this is working now. Right, we're live. Do we have audio? Yes, we do. All right, good. Goodness me, 2 false starts then. Well, best not dwell. We've got some good stuff to go over this evening. Thank you for joining, and thank you for the shout that the audio wasn't working. Goodness me. We've got some good stuff to go over. We've got a couple of different articles which are cause for hopium on plant-based meat. Got an article in Ingredients Network about the price gap closing in Europe, boosting plant-based meat sales. And we've also got a Google translated article from a German newspaper on the same topic. So a couple of different sources pointing at a comeback, a plant-based comeback. We've also got a little bit of UPF nonsense, including a story in Green Queen about the FDA admitting that they couldn't define ultra-processed foods for the purpose of regulating them, which, who's surprised by this, ultimately? You look into the details and the whole thing falls apart. Shocking, shocking, I know. We've also got an article in The Atlantic on the same topic. There's a little bit of a longer read, as well as an article in a new investigative journalism outlet called Grilled, looking at leaked documents from a European farm lobby detailing their plot to undermine the EU's Green Deal. So a lot of good stuff to get into. Hey, Alicia. Hey, Tristan. How's it going? Nice to see you guys. Thank you for bearing with me through technical difficulties here. You know what? We'll start off with a bit of Fast Action Network. Ooh, well, yeah, okay. We've got Stream Elements bot, which I guess I forgot I set that up. But that's something. That's something that's happening. I need to keep up with Tristan King. There he is. Look. There he is. He's always the top on these. So I got to keep up with the king. I got to get on the Fast Action Network. Look, I'm back up to a 3-week streak. So I really fell off for, I would say, about 3 months. But we're coming back. We're coming back. And you know, sometimes I just got to give them a chance to catch me up. I don't know if I missed enough of a beat to actually be down on points. I'm on 679 points now. And the streak is only 4 weeks now. You reached 1,000 today? Is that real, Tristan? Oh my goodness. I thought, that's mental. Fair play to you. I thought there was a chance I had slipped out of the lead. And then I was like, maybe not, because unless there's a campaign that actually closed in the time that I was away, I did the backlog, right? I did the backlog, so I thought I had all of it. You've reached 1,000 points? That's insane. Dude, literally that is the first time I'm hearing of someone who has higher points than me on Fast Action Network. That was the first time. And I always ask on stream, I always say, can anyone beat this? Anyone got higher points? And I assume, you know, people would say if they did. But that's mental. Fair play to you. 1,000 points. That's a big milestone, dude. Congrats. That's awesome. Man, I gotta up my game. That is the highest points I've ever heard of. I've never heard someone having higher points than I do on this platform. And that's, you've almost doubled. So that is fast action mogging from Tristan King. That's mental. Well done, mate. I'm noticing now my stream here says offline, so I don't know if that means... Thank you, dude. I appreciate that. I appreciate the hell out of you, man. Well, give me a shout if I am still here, because it's now telling me that I'm offline on my end. But no, I think it's working. Nice, Alicia. Yeah, let me give the king a sub also. Boom. I don't know how I hadn't done that already. I appreciate you, Alicia. Thanks for the shout. Yeah, I don't do the phone and the postcard ones. I always consider to be... you really got to be in the US to do that, right? I'm not going to be sending international mail. So that's the chance to get me. Fair play, 1,000 points. That is special. I thought I was mogging on this platform. But fair play. Right. So let me do a few of these before we get into the news. We're on action.thehumaneleague.org for anyone who wants to join. Hey, Tone, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Nice to see you. Right, we're on 685. Let's go to 700. If we've got enough things to do on the list, we'll go to 700. And then I'll get into the news. I've got to... man, I'm never going to catch the king now. Google review. I love the Google review ones. Except when you have to write your own. It's shameful that Kroger is still supplying eggs from caged hens. Especially when you committed to phasing this out by last year. What happened? Alright, let's go. Oh, look, it did give me a message. Okay, well, there you go. Postcard, LinkedIn, here we go. We'll have a LinkedIn action. 688. We'll go to 700 on Fast Action Network. Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks, Tone. I was just saying, I fell off for a long time. But I'm back, and we've got some really good news to get into tonight. There's a couple of really good, like, optimistic things. And actually, I almost forgot. I have a pending bet with Paul Wood, who was in LinkedIn comments earlier on. I commented on a LinkedIn post about one of the stories we're going to read about this evening. And LinkedIn, I think the reason it's so good for arguments is because it really prioritizes comments in the algo. So if you comment on something, even more so than sharing something, it puts it up the feed. So evidently that got onto Paul Wood's feed, and he commented something about plant-based is dying and blah, blah. And I said, you know what, I would put money on plant-based meat sales going up in the next year compared to this year. And he has agreed to that in principle. He said, well, let's do a charity bet. He said, we'll do a little charitable bet on plant-based sales going up or down. We haven't exactly defined the parameters yet, but I've got an idea of what I'm going to say to that. There was a GFI report this year came out in 2026 and it's comparing sales data from 2025 to 2024. And in that report, I think it was global sales are up 3% or 4%, something like that. So I'm going to propose to bet Paul Wood that when the same report comes out next year, which will be, I think comes out April or May 2027, comparing 2026 numbers to 2025, that we're going to see an increase rather than a decrease. So that's the bet I'm going to propose. And, you know, it was Paul's idea to do a charity bet. I am going to suggest annual charity evaluators, and I guess that Paul will decide a charity if he wins it. Probably be like the chicken torturing charity or something. But I'm not worried, because we're going to win. Right. Oh my goodness, I hate when I have to, I hate when I have to write my own of these, especially when I'm trying to ramble on something else. Dear Mike, it's extremely disappointing that Kroger is still selling eggs from caged hens, especially since you committed to stopping this by last year. What happened? Are you not ashamed that this is going on in your name? Look at that. If I received that email, that'd really hit me. What? Oh, okay. All right. It's... Goodness me. I'm all over the gaff today. Right, we'll get to 700 points here. Give us a chance in hell of keeping up with the king. And then we'll get into the news. Here we go. Here's a nice easy one. They've written it for me this time. That's the way we like it. 696. Here's for 698. And here's for 700. Let's go. Hello? Did that send? Yes. Hell yes! I'm now a chicken hero. I'm now a chicken hero. Goodness me, I'm glad I went to 700. Any other chicken heroes? Actually, Tristan, I wonder what kind of props you got at the 1,000 points level. Chicken legend? What do you get when you get to 1,000 points? Only one man that I know has ever got there. And he's in chat right now. It's Tristan King. What a god amongst men, honestly. I'm so stoked that somebody watched my channel and then... You don't get anything for 1,000? Oh, that's crazy. I'm so stoked that someone watched my channel and got so locked on doing a Fast Action Network. I know I say it all the time, but it's... you only need a few people who have that, like, real drive and obsession to do it. Really, really impressive stuff. Anytime I go to comment on any of these, Tristan King's got there first. He's a bloody legend, I tell you. Well, there we go. Chicken Hero at 700 points. I can't believe you don't get anything for 1,000. I wonder when the next milestone is. Seems like 1,000 should be one, no? Well, you get props in you get props in this YouTube chat, so, you know, that counts for something. That counts for something, right? All right, let's have a look at the news. And like I said, we've got a couple of pieces of very optimistic news. And I'm very bullish on plant-based meat at the moment. I'm just seeing so many indicators that's like plant-based is coming back. I reached the highest award just now. For real? 700? That's such a strange place to put the bar. 1,000 is so... I think they should add more high achievements to shoot for. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They were never counting on someone being as committed. I'd love to see, like, the global leaderboard for it. There must be such a thing. Or someone has that information, right? So there's just a spreadsheet on the THL side. I wonder who has the highest points. TK's got to be in the top percentile, I would think. There can't be that many people close to 1,000. That is bloody impressive, honestly. Well, we'll start out with Ingredients Network. Plant-based price gap closes in Europe, driving sales. Let's go. The price of plant-based alternatives is falling, leading to volume growth in some European countries, according to Circana and Nielsen IQ sales data. Data from 6 European countries, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and the UK, shows that the price gap between plant-based foods and their animal-based equivalents narrowed in most categories in 2025, leading to sales volume growth as products began to meet consumer expectations. New data shows the price gap between alternatives in meat and dairy narrowing, leading to volume growth. Brands must combine affordability with taste to attract more consumers. Europe must diversify its protein mix, with plant-based alternatives and fermentation part of a new protein strategy. The Good Food Institute analysed Circana and Nielsen IQ retail sales data and found that sales in France were up 11% to €0.57 billion and 7.7% in Spain to €0.55 billion. Germany, the largest market, also managed a 3.1% uplift to €1.71 billion, while in Italy the category grew 4.5%, to €0.67 billion. The Netherlands faced a slight decline, falling 4.1% to €0.26 billion, while sales in the UK also contracted, down 1.2% to €0.99 billion. Plant-based options generally remain more expensive per kilo than their animal-based equivalents, but the price gap narrowed last year, explained Helen Brewood, GFI Europe Senior Market and Consumer Insights Manager. In most cases, this correlated with growing plant-based sales volumes. Okay, so far we've been talking about sales value, right? The dollar amount or the euro amount as it is, which has gone up in 4 out of 6 countries and down in 2 out of 6. But an interesting component of this, and we're going to read a bit about this in the Germany article as well, the price has come down, right? So the sales volume increase, the actual number of units sold or the kilos of product moved, is going to be even higher increases compared to the price rise, compared to the value increase, because they're selling for cheaper as well. Sales volumes were up in France 13%, Spain 6.6%, Germany 6.2%, and Italy 5.8%. So you can see these are generally, all except Spain, these are generally even higher increases in volume than the increases in value that we've just read about. In the UK and the Netherlands, they fell 2.5% and 1.3% respectively. Interesting, okay. So these are like the more mature markets, you might say. Although, that said, I would have put Germany in that category as well, and they've seen 6% volume growth on this measure. But overall, it's looking up in Europe, This is pretty good news for us. Taste and affordability, the perfect recipe for plants. The plant-based food and drink category has been under pressure in recent months due to the cost of living crisis, scrutiny over levels of processing and long ingredients lists, and a lack of innovation. However, the analysis showed growth being driven by improvements in affordability and taste. In Italy, for example, plant-based meat and milk recorded sales growth, while average prices declined slightly. It's worth saying as well, when there's a bit of sort of hedging language here about average prices declining slightly, like there's kind of modest falls in prices for plant-based products. Generally, the price of animal products has gone up, right? So even if there's like a couple of % on average price drop for plant-based products, if you look at the difference compared to animal products, it's going to be, that gap has closed even more than these numbers are suggesting, because the animal products are continuing to get more expensive. In France, plant-based meat prices fell and sales volume increased by almost 17%. Wow. Jeez. Okay, these are some wild numbers now. Volume up 17% in France. This is not insignificant growth. This is huge. All the signals I'm seeing are the signs of a plant-based comeback. You heard it here first. Like, I've been saying this. We've reached the bottom. We're seeing the prices cross over, and we're about to see pedal to the metal for plant-based sales growth. The death of the plant-based category has been much exaggerated, as it turns out. In Spain, plant-based milk, the category with the smallest price gap, remains by far the largest and most successful plant-based category, accounting for more than 1 in 10 litres of milk sold in Spanish retailers. Wow, that's crazy. More than 1 in 10 litres of milk sold in Spain is plant-based milk. Now, I've heard similar numbers for the UK and the US, like several years ago. It was at kind of 10% of the total milk market. But Spain is going to be a much more difficult market for this category. A much more conservative, less progressive with respect to plant-based products. And still, 1 in 10 litres of milk now is plant-based. You can see why the livestock lobby spends so much time and effort and money trying to suppress the plant-based category. Because it's really taking chunks out of their sales now. If you're an animal farmer and you're trying to sell your dairy milk, and now 1 in 10 of those sales are going to the plant-based sector, yeah, you're going to put a bit of money into trying to nuke the whole thing, aren't you? GFI said these trends indicate that smaller price premiums may be driving growth in some categories and markets. Innovation and taste can help justify a larger price gap. In the UK, more expensive plant-based milk options, including oat and barista-style varieties, performed well in 2025, suggesting that taste and product performance were decisive factors for consumers. Is UPF backlash driving interest in tofu, tempeh, and seitan? Uh-oh. The growing popularity of tofu, tempeh, and seitan also points to affordability and may reflect consumer interest in less processed foods, said GFI. Sales volumes of these products increased by almost 30% in both Germany and the Netherlands in 2025. In the Netherlands, tofu costs roughly 1/3 as much as branded plant-based meat products. Wow. 30% increase in sales for tofu. This is, I don't know if I've ever seen a number that big for year-on-year sales increase. That's wild. Now, I should say, I'm pretty sure that that's starting from a much lower point. So tofu sales are up 30% in Germany and the Netherlands, but it's starting from a much lower point, and I think still total sales for plant-based meat are much higher than for tofu. Even though tofu costs roughly 1/3 as much. Jesus. So there's some real cheap options there. Yet lower prices alone do not guarantee success, even during the continued cost of living crisis. Indeed, despite the significant price difference, people across all 6 countries purchase significantly more plant-based meat than tofu, tempeh and seitan combined, GFI noted. Yep, that's what I said. Which indicates that products that replicate the taste, texture or format of conventional meat are reaching a wider audience. Hey, Victors, how are you going? Other plant-based products struggled in certain countries. In Spain, sales volume fell by 7% as prices rose, with plant-based meat costing more than twice as much as conventional meat in 2025. Wow, okay. Wait, didn't we just read that Spain sales volume was up 17%? Oh, this is France. But didn't we... Sales volume were up in Spain 6.6%, but now we're reading it's down 7%. Or is this for tofu? I'm getting mixed signals here. I guess they're talking about tofu here, there must be. The Netherlands witnessed a similar decline, driven largely by a drop-off in sales of higher-priced branded products. Prices also increased in the UK, where plant-based meat in supermarkets, excluding discounters, contracted significantly, while separate data from Nielsen IQ suggests a shift towards discounter stores. Yeah, that's interesting. So oftentimes we are hearing about and talking about sales of branded plant-based meat companies, of branded plant-based meat, right? So it's going to tend to be more expensive than supermarket own brand, and certainly, discounter supermarkets. We've got your Aldis and your Lidls. And we've read before that those supermarkets are doing very well in this cost of living crisis. So, depending where the data is coming from, and this is supermarkets excluding discounters, we might be seeing a more pessimistic picture than is really warranted. If sales are going up in discounter supermarkets, which we have reason to believe they are, then sales overall could still be up, right? Brewood said the findings point to a significant opportunity. If producers can continue improving taste while bringing prices closer to those of conventional meat, plant-based meat could play a much larger role in achieving crucial climate goals and improving public health without requiring consumers to give up familiar dishes. Rebalancing protein mix to protect security. Growth in plant-based alternatives will also be essential to Europe's protein security, according to new research by the European Environment Agency. Europe must rebalance its protein production and consumption mix in order to reduce emissions, protect biodiversity, and reduce reliance on imports, the agency said this month, June. It's kind of weird wording, but fine. Plant-based proteins like meat and dairy alternatives, as well as legumes and pulses, offer the most immediate environmental benefits, the EAEA said. Emerging options like insects, biomass fermentation, precision fermentation, and cultivated meat will also play a role. I'm not so sure about the insects. Everything I've seen is kind of pointing towards insects falling off, honestly. A lot of insect companies not doing so hot right now. I'll not eat the bugs. I will not be eating the bugs. The benefits of protein diversification are likely to outweigh the associated risks and trade-offs, particularly as the transition towards a more diversified protein system is expected to unfold gradually rather than through abrupt structural changes, reads the report. Protein diversification, strategic risks and opportunities for sustainable food systems. EEA forecasts that established plant-based proteins are likely to remain central in the near term due to their relatively high technological maturity, environmental performance, and market readiness. Insects, biomass fermentation, precision fermentation, and cultivated meat may play more specialized or longer-term roles across food, feed, and ingredient markets, added. The average protein intake among adults in the EU is around 80 to 85 grams per person per day, exceeding dietary requirements for most population groups. Animal-based products account for roughly 60% of total protein intake. The EA said, although dietary shifts that incorporate more plant-based foods are emerging in some member states, sustained demand for livestock-derived foods continues to shape production systems, associated feed demand, and broader agricultural market. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. So broadly good news here. We've got sales volumes going up for plant-based meat in most of the major European markets, according to the most recent data released by the Good Food Institute, including up double digits in France and up significantly in Spain, Germany, and Italy as well. And we've got another source from a German newspaper talking about the plant-based comeback in Germany in particular. Meat substitutes are picking up speed again. This is Google translated from the original article in German, which is why it looks a little bit funky here. But we'll read this and we'll see. We'll see. This is basically more good news. Massive increases in the plant-based market in France, and as we're going to read here, massive increases in Germany as well. Competition in the market for meat alternatives is intensifying. It's becoming increasingly clear which manufacturers will dominate the segment in the future. For companies that want to make acquisitions, the category remains attractive. Yeah, this is what we were reading about last time with the mergers and acquisitions in Alt Proteins. It's really kind of consolidating and moving out of this experimental market period into a phase where really the winners are going to be well established. And you have companies making plant-based products which are now being chosen by the market to be the successful ones. And that is going to be fueling this second wave, the surge, the resurge of the plant-based sector. The wave of consolidation in the plant-based industry shows no signs of abating. Between 2019 and 2021, the hype and investments in the category reached their peak. Since then, a bit more realism has set in. Smaller startups have had to close down, while other companies have been acquired. This year has seen several high-profile acquisitions. The most recent in the meat and sausage alternative sector, the Live Kindly Collective announced the acquisition of the German startup Greenforce at the beginning of July. Live Kindly is already active in the German market, Austria, the Benelux countries, and the UK with its Like brand. With the merger, CEO David Suarez is now expanding his product range in Germany to include vegan sausages and plant-based cheese. Seems like a good play. Anyone know if Germans like sausages? Not sure on that. We'll have to fact check that. The transaction is expected to be finalised by September. Another deal. In February of this year, the British tofu manufacturer Tofu bought the German producer Topas. The company focuses on meat substitutes made from seitan, the recent acquisition of the plant-based drink and tofu manufacturer. Okay, this is where the translate might be messing with us a little bit, but we'll try and stick with it. Bereif by the dairy group Müller showed that... Is that the name of a brand? Bereif? Okay. By the dairy group Müller showed that established food companies don't want to miss out on the businesses with plant-based raw materials. Bereif generates 113 million euros in revenue. Companies announced the completion of the deal last week. Several smaller companies have disappeared from the market. For example, L'Herbivore, a manufacturer of vegan meat alternatives from Mecklenburg, Western Pomerania, filed for insolvency in 2024. The startup Outlaws from Bern was liquidated this year. The remnants of the mushroom startup Bosk Foods, which had to file for insolvency in Germany, went to the mushroom protein company Infinite Roots from Hamburg. And even in the niche segment of cultured meat, some companies had to give up. There's a major market correction in the plant-based sector that will continue, says Felix Leonhardt. You know, I thought this was going to be a lot more hype. Not going to lie, I thought this was going to be a lot more hype. I think we also only have the first section of this article, which is a little bit annoying. What I don't see in the section of the article that we actually have here was communicated in the email of the person who sent me this, which is the 17% number. 17.2% to be precise, is the increase in sales volume for plant-based meat year on year in Germany. 17%. This is like big growth. You know, when I'm talking to Paul Wood and I'm going to bet him that the category is going to grow overall, okay, most recent report was that it grew 3 or 4%. It's like, it's up, but it's like basically flat. 17% growth. That's big time. Managing partner at venture capital firm Oyster Bay, Felix Leonhardt. However, he believes that the investors are slowly regaining confidence. We've been through the trough of tears and the mood is slowly improving, says Leonhardt. That's a funny translation. That must be how it's called in German. I've heard the phrase trough of disillusionment for the period, for, like from investors' perspective, where it kind of slows down. But the trough of tears in German translates from the German. With this statement, he alludes to the Gartner hype cycle, according to which expectations for new technologies develop over time, from initial euphoria through the trough of disillusionment, there it is, to a phase of growing acceptance. Yeah, the idea is that when there's some new technology that's very novel and very, you know, everyone thinks this is the new thing and it's going to change the world, there's a lot of hype around it. And then as some of the realities and imperfections of those technologies become apparent, like, for example, plant-based meat's actually pretty expensive pound for pound compared to conventional meat. And some of these products are not that great. Like, we may have had this kind of feeling in 2021, 2022, when the investments start to cool off. Then it's not uncommon to get a period of months to years of, you know, the trough of disillusionment, where it really drops off. People think, okay, you know, the hype's over there. But normally the underlying truth is that there really is something in this technology. All the reasons why plant-based meat was a good idea conceptually are still totally valid. There still really is like massive efficiency improvements compared to conventional meat, massive reductions in environmental impact, healthier nutritional profile, no need to slaughter animals, which people are becoming increasingly averse to. All of those things are still true. And basically, the details, the precise, you know, price and quality performance of these products continues to improve through that trough of disillusionment. And then you come back up for the second wind, which is what we're seeing now, where all of the reasons behind plant-based meat being a good idea are still totally valid and true and correct. And now the products are catching up to the expectations. The price is coming down, the quality is continuing to go up. All of the reasons why it was a good idea remain. And so we're going to see a much stronger comeback for the plant-based sector. And I've been saying this for a long time. We've been through the trough of disillusionment, my friends, and we're coming out the other side. Regarding Muller's appointment at Barif, that it has been beaten, Leonhardt is not surprised. Okay. I think this is the translate playing with me again, or the formatting potentially. Traditional meat and dairy companies are the most likely buyers, he says, and also explains why. The companies don't want to be left behind. There's a lot of interest among meat companies. They want to be in the game and not become the next Nokia, he explains. The manufacturer had long dominated the global mobile phone market, but missed the leap into the smartphone era. In addition to strategic positioning, Leonhardt mentions that another driver for acquisitions, the experiences the past 5 years. Volatility in supply chains has been very high, he says. Companies are reacting to this, diversifying and mitigating risks. He continued on page 32. Annoyingly, we don't have the whole article here. I did find it online, but it's paywalled. I even tried to see if there's a cheeky way around the paywall, but alas, not this time. So we don't actually have, in this snippet of the article, the 17% number, which is the really big news coming out of this. 17% year-on-year volume growth for plant-based meat in Germany. This is huge. Germany is one of the biggest, I think maybe the biggest market for plant-based meat in Europe. It's either Germany or the UK. And double digits percentage growth. Like, it's back. It's back. It's coming back. This is the front page, by the way. Oh, no, it's not. That's fake news. Sorry. Okay, it says continued on page 32, which is the next page. I thought this was... All right. Never mind. Fake news. Fake news. But 17% year-on-year growth in Germany. We've just read as well that we had, what was it, 13% year-on-year growth in France, which is going to be another big market in Europe. Going to be, well, one of the most populous countries, probably, you know, less consumption per capita of these products. But basically another big market in Europe, massive growth, growth in Spain, growth in Germany, growth in Italy. Plant-based is coming back. I am very, very confident on this. And let's go and conclude this bet then. Because I'm going to put some money on this with friend of the channel, or foe of the channel, Paul Wood. I'll show you the back and forth on the LinkedIn comments here. I commented on this article from Green Queen Media, which we're going to read now. FDA admits defining ultra-processed foods is challenging, says it won't ban them. I commented, good. This has always been a garbage way of categorizing foods that adds nothing, and has been consistently weaponized by the livestock industries. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. Plant-based meat is healthier than meat. I might put that on a t-shirt. My plant-based meat's healthier than meat t-shirt. I might do that. Seems so far away here in Oklahoma. Oh, you're in Oklahoma? Okay, that's... yeah, a long way from vegan country, Tristan. Do you know, I always say for people who are in, like, less vegan areas... it's even more important that you are there and setting that example and being that beacon. Right, you count for way more than if you were one more vegan in San Francisco. Or Brooklyn or some other, I don't know what the other woke areas are. Seattle, right? Shout out to the Oklahoma vegans. That's doing God's work, I tell you. So our friend Paul Wood came on and commented, problem is, just repeating this mantra does not make it true. The variability in quality of plant-based meat makes it impossible to make this statement. They're not a single category of products. They are a single category of products, but I know what he's saying. I'm sure some are good, but many are crap. Hence why consumer uptake is falling. Wrong. Wrong. He's just wrong about that. He doesn't know. He's you know, fair play. This has been the narrative for the last few years, and I don't necessarily expect Paul Wood to be up on the latest developments. But yeah, he's just wrong to say that consumer uptake is falling at this point. I said, not all men are taller than all women, but on average, men are taller than women is true. Don't worry, we're at the start of the plant-based comeback. Sales volumes are up 17% year-on-year in Germany as prices fall below the cost of meat. And here we go, here's the bet. I said I'd put money on plant-based sales volumes continuing to grow from here, while meat continues to fall off in developed countries. And Paul Wood came back, very happy to make a charity bet on this issue. Overall, plant-based meats are still going backwards. So let's see. Let's see. The thing... My dog's threatening to go crazy, so I'll keep an eye on him. The report on global sales is GFI Euromonitor. Plant-based meat sales 2026. Is this what I want? 2026 State of the Industry, yeah. So this is the latest report. And where's that year-on-year volume change? Okay, so this is all plant-based foods. We've got... It says 3%. That's all plant-based foods, it looks like. Oh yeah, here we go. Global retail plant-based meat and seafood market. Now we want to talk about volume, tons, because as I said, the prices for these products are going down. So if we're talking about value, there could be a situation where the value goes down even though the volume's gone up because the price is falling so much. So we've got sales volume increased 3% globally. I'd love to see if they mention a trend here. But okay, let's... My dog going crazy. You have to give me a minute here. A little bit late for the postman. All right. Okay, so let's specify this then for Paul Wood. Let's lock it in. Let's do it. I saw someone was having a fit on Discord. Yeah, no, just in my room, unfortunately. Let's do it. I'll bet that the Good Food Institute's State of the Industry report in 2027. Oh, how am I going to phrase this? Oh, yeah, for 2020. Oh, yeah, okay, so it'll be the 2027 State of the Industry report. Good Food Institute's 2027 State of the Industry report will report an increase in global retail volume for plant-based meat. Oh, let's put the plant-based meat and seafood category. I'll bet that the Good Food Institute's 2027 State of the Industry report will report an increase in global retail volume. Yeah, or sales volume, let's say. Plant-based meat and seafood category. How much should I suggest? Let's do 100, hey? I'll bet you $100. Good Food Institute's 2027 State of the Industry report will report an increase in global retail sales volume for the plant-based meat and seafood category. That report will likely come out in April, May next year. So if you're game, I'll remind you then. If I'm right, you can donate to animal charity evaluators. If the sales volume goes down, I will donate to a charity of your choice. Let's do it. Let's do it. We're putting money on it. We're putting our money where the mouth is. And you know, I'm not nervous about that. I have been saying for a while that we're at the start of the plant-based comeback. I am very confident that we're going to see plant-based sales continue to grow. They've even gone up in the most recent year. So I don't know where Paul's getting his numbers from, but the most recent report is showing sales volume increasing 3% in 2025 versus 2024. So in 2027, they'll release the numbers for the 2026 compared to 2025. And we'll see. We'll see which direction it goes. $6.6 billion in 2025. But again, we're going to talk about volume because the value is also partly a function of price. And I think we're going to see price going up also. Is that US or Australian dollars? Yeah, good point. That's a fair question. Maybe I should specify. Oh, I never like editing comments there because it looks kind of cucked when it says edited there. I'll let him ask about it. I'll let him ask. I'm sure there's other things to like further dial in on this bet anyways. But there we go. Money where my mouth is on plant-based growth. The comeback is on. Now let's see about this story. FDA admits defining ultra-processed foods is challenging, says it won't ban them. This is the latest installment in the UPF saga. And you know, I'm really disappointed that it's even got this far. The whole UPF thing is just such a hoax, such obvious nonsense, that I'm really disappointed that it's even being considered in this much detail by policymakers. Policymakers in the US as well. I mean, I guess this is RFK's FDA, so perhaps I shouldn't be too surprised. But, you know, I've always said that UPF is a framework that's really aimed at consumers who are too busy and ill-informed to form coherent ideas, frankly, about a lot of these things. And if something kind of feels right, it is right from the perspective of your average uninformed consumer. But when it comes to policymakers, we're not just talking about someone busy in the supermarket and their kids screaming anymore. We're talking about teams of nutritionists whose job it is full-time to analyze these frameworks and make policy and decisions based on them. And when you have that level of detail, it's very difficult to pull the wool over their eyes, right? So the ultra-processed foods framing might fly for consumers, but in a policy context, I've always said this is a non-starter. Like, it's just stupid on the face of it. And I guess I'm partly vindicated here because they've looked into it and concluded, actually, there's no coherent definition, so we can't really do anything. Which, told you so, right? This is what I've been saying all along. But honestly, it's kind of disappointing that it even got this far. I would have thought that for most people who are like educated enough to be thinking about making policy on this topic, it's just obviously stupid on the face of it. And I've spoken a lot about my criticisms of Nova and the ultra-processed framework. So I think you guys kind of know my take on this for the most part. But yeah, the Food and Drug Administration in the US has looked into banning ultra-processed foods and decided we can't actually do it because there's no coherent definition. So let's get into it. This is a nice short piece from Green Queen, and there's a longer one from The Atlantic that I've got as well that we can go through. But look at all of this lovely bloody plant-based meat. This is courtesy of Quorn. Quorn is pretty underrated, I would say. You know, The drawback of Quorn is that they often have egg in them. So a lot of Quorn products are not vegan. But I feel like, in general, Quorn's pretty underrated. Because they were one of the OGs. For a long time, they were the only really meat-free brand. And I think, therefore, a lot of people think, oh, it's kind of old school, it's a bit old-fashioned. It's not like a cool new brand like Beyond or something. But a lot of Quorn products are pretty good. I don't mind a lot of the Quorn products that are vegan I have. And they're pretty good, so I appreciate Quorn. But here we go. What has RFK's FDA been up to, and how much time have they wasted looking into this? A victory for the UPF skeptics, truly. The Trump administration is finding it difficult to land on a standardized definition of ultra-processed food, according to the FDA's acting deputy chief, who reiterated the agency doesn't plan to ban these products. Establishing a streamlined definition of ultra-processed food is turning out to be more challenging than the US government might have thought. Yeah, not more challenging than we thought. This is peak I told you so for me. I was writing about how UPF is nonsense back in 2023, and if anything since then it's kind of got more mainstream and got into these policy discussions, which again I think is a travesty that it even got this far. But surprise, surprise, when they look into the details of it, oh, actually, there's not a coherent definition, so we can't really do anything here. Shock. I'm shocked about this outcome. The Food and Drug Administration has been working with the US Department of Agriculture, always a red flag, and other federal agencies to develop a definition of these foods, which have become a focal point of the Trump administration's food policy. Yeah, I guess... Again, in the context, like perhaps we shouldn't be so surprised. It's not going to be the sharpest minds in the country in the Trump administration. And indeed, this is coming out of RFK's department. Working with the Department of Agriculture, I mean, this is, I always say, departments of agriculture largely seem to view their role as protecting the livestock sector, which is not meant to be the case. So the fact that they've been involved is already, to me, a red flag that they've been looking for reasons to attack plant-based products again. UPFs have been linked to a host of health ailments, including early death. That said, many experts warn against conflating processing with nutrition, suggesting that most research points to the ill effects of consuming junk food that's poor in nutritional credentials rather than food that has been overly processed. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how much I should reiterate the basics of my criticism here. There will be a lot of crossover in those categories. Most foods that get put in the category called ultra-processed foods will also have nutritional profiles that are poor. High in fat, high in salt, high in sugar, low in fiber, low in protein, low in other positive nutrients, right? So those foods are unhealthy. But they're not unhealthy because they're ultra-processed. They're unhealthy because they're unhealthy. Because they have poor nutritional profiles. There's nothing about being processed per se that makes foods unhealthy. And the FDA is discovering that here. The contentious nature of these foods stems from the fact that there's no standardized definition of UPFs. That's what the FDA is struggling with. Its acting Deputy Commissioner for Food, Donald Prater, said the agency had found it quite challenging to set a definition because there are a variety being used out there. Speaking at the IFT First Trade Show in Chicago, he stated that the FDA is evaluating different proposals to try and find something that makes sense, since the science on UPFs is still evolving. Yeah, many people are saying this. Trying to find something that makes sense with respect to ultra-processed foods, that is more challenging than it probably sounds. There's a bunch of different definitions that have been posed. Many of them have clearly stupid constituent parts of them. One of the main definitions proposed in the book, Ultra-Processed People, is being wrapped in plastic and having more than 5 ingredients. Wow. Is this what decades of nutritional science have culminated in? Foods that are wrapped in plastic and have more than 5 ingredients are unhealthy. You can wrap an apple in plastic, and you can add a 6th ingredient to your salad. That does not make these foods unhealthy. So to me, the whole ultra-processed thing has been stupid on the face of it. And to others, it only becomes apparent that it's stupid once you look into it and try and make a definition and try and make policy, and it slips through your fingers like water. Further, he confirmed that despite calls for the government to ban these products, the food regulator doesn't intend to do so, echoing comments made by Health Secretary RFK earlier this year. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a good idea. Again, if you've not given it more than a moment's thought. But if you have given it more than a moment's thought, you're going to realize that that entails a lot of foods that just contain preservatives or like plastic packaging, right? These things which are going to make the food system possible. Like, try banning ultra-processed foods. Try it. It's not going to end well. One of the things that I said in the onstage debate about UPFs that I did recently was that this definition of ultra-processed foods can apply to supplements and vitamin pills. And clearly these are not unhealthy to consume. And somebody on the panel said, oh no, vitamin pills are excluded. I said, what actually is the purpose of this category if we're going to set up criteria for being ultra-processed foods, which sometimes apply and sometimes don't apply, and then we're also going to have all of these exceptions, or it doesn't apply to fortified foods and it doesn't apply to vitamins. Like, there's no coherent definition. There's all of these different exceptions. Ultimately, we just end up saying unhealthy foods are unhealthy. So this is seriously not a useful category and not something that's going to be feasible to regulate on, as the FDA is discovering. Lack of standardized definition causes confusion. Here we've got one of the possible criteria and classifications of processed foods within the NOVA framework, which again, this just means new in Portuguese. It's not like some scientific acronym. It just means we made this up recently in Brazil. Under the NOVA classification that birthed the concept, food is grouped into 4 categories: unprocessed or minimally processed, like fresh produce; processed culinary ingredients, like olive oil and salt; processed foods, like certain cheeses and artisan breads; and UPFs. The latter group is made up of foods made with industrial formulations and techniques or containing cosmetic additives thought to be of little culinary use. So this is one definition that they're posing here for the purpose of this article. And already this is kind of flimsy. Cosmetic additives thought to be of little culinary use. Well, why would they be used in foods if they're of little culinary use? This is already imprecise and incorrect. Made with industrial formulations or techniques. Again, why would we think that that means that they're unhealthy? It could easily be the case that foods made using industrial techniques are the most healthy. It could be the case that there's levels of food safe and healthiness that can only be attained when using industrial techniques, like pasteurized milk compared to raw milk, for example. Put simply, they're thought of as foods you can't make at home in your kitchen. Again, dumb. Like, why would we think that means they're unhealthy? Could easily be the case that the healthiest foods can't be made at home in your kitchen. Now, you know, forgiveness to Green Queen here. They're kind of posing a definition for the purpose of this article, and the wider point of this article, of course, is that this is an ill-defined category. This isn't really tightly defined, and there's not really a coherent definition. So they're having to say something here. And look, next paragraph. The problem is this is too broad a brush to paint with. Under this classification, UPFs include an ice cream tub from Ben & Jerry's, a pack of Oreos, a can of Campbell's soup, a flavoured yoghurt from Chobani, a box of Kellogg's All-Bran cereal, and a barista oat milk from Oatly. Yeah, you're going to have things like All-Bran, which is like one of the healthiest foods that you can have, as well as Ben & Jerry's ice cream and Oreos, things which are obviously unhealthy. The lack of consistency is what has led many health experts to discourage using Nova's definition of UPFs as a blanket marker for unhealthy food. For example, whole grain cereals and supermarket breads contain important nutrients, especially fibre, while plant-based alternatives to meat and milk offer protein with much more fibre and less saturated fat than their animal-derived counterparts. Yeah, I mean, I'm very much, my thinking of this is very much a product of the work that I do, but in my view, it seems like the ultra-processed foods classification is just something purely championed by the livestock industries to attack plant-based products. We know that it has been used this way, and people in different industries have different perspectives on this, but this is just such a backwards way of classifying foods, especially when it comes to plant-based alternatives. Again, plant-based meat is healthier than meat, and this UPF hysteria is really one of the weapons that the livestock industry has used to bash plant-based meat. If we can put it in this category alongside ice cream and Oreos, right, then we can say, oh, these are all the ultra-processed foods, and ultra-processed foods are unhealthy. That's the trick. That's the sleight of hands, and it's ridiculous. Doesn't survive scrutiny for a moment. Studies have concluded that these products don't carry the same health risks as, say, a Kit Kat bar or a bottle of Coke, so bundling them all in the same category is misleading. Yeah, absolutely. This makes a standardized definition of UPFs crucial. Well, yeah, I mean, or just abandon the category. Like, it would be crucial to have a standardized definition of UPFs if this was a category that we have to use. But it's not. We can just say, this category is not that useful, is it? No, let's stop using it, shall we? Yeah. The lack of a standardized definition is, of course, like a good argument against doing stuff from a policy perspective. But I don't think that we need urgently to come up with a standard definition of UPFs. We can just say categorizing foods in this way is not helpful. US startup Wisecode has come up with its own version, classifying food as minimal, light, moderate, ultra, or super ultra processed. Oh my god. New levels unlocked. Okay. Super ultra processed. Fucking give me some of that. Sign me up for super ultra processed foods. Yes, please. The latter two groups comprise products with many additives, industrial formulations, emulsifiers, and flavor enhancers. Yeah, I mean, again, it's many additives. How many is many? Industrial formulations. There's going to be all sorts of holes that you can pick in this. Emulsifiers and flavor enhancers. So you're saying there has to have all of these things or just some of these things? How many of these things? If something has a flavor enhancer, does that make it super ultra processed? Like, the whole thing is just a bit of a game and a bit of a joke. These are highlighted by a verification label called the UPF Standard. The Non-UPF program and the Non-UPF project have launched their own verification marks over the last couple of years. Yeah, interesting that there's a bunch of companies and organizations trying to cash in on this trend. Yeah, you can sign up to the Non-UPF project and get a label that you can put on your food to say that it's not UPF, and pay them for the privilege of doing that. I'm sure, right? It'd be surprising if there weren't people taking advantage of this hysteria and trying to cash in on it. So, of course, this exists. That doesn't make it any more scientifically valid. 6 fruit salad packaged in plastic equals ultra-processed. Yeah, true. FDA's role isn't to ban UPF, says Deputy Chief. Well, we're not going to agree with many things here, but I think this is probably one of them. Yeah, here's RFK riding the anti-ultra-process wave. I really think, and I hope, that in 5 years' time, or maybe even less than that, we'll all look back and say, can you remember when everyone was really concerned about ultra-processed foods? That was weird, wasn't it? Remember when that was a big thing? Everyone thought that processing was a problem. That was weird. These health fads come and go. And this isn't going to stand up to scrutiny. I really feel the tide's starting to turn on this as well. The FDA is tackling UPFs at a time when they make up 55% of Americans' calories, rising to 67% among children. Again, how can you even say this with any confidence when the definition is so amorphous and changing? This is going to be like the results of some study that has used some certain definition and categorized foods in this way. But if you look at another study, they'll be categorizing foods in another way. They'll categorize the same foods differently. And they'll come up with different numbers of how much of Americans' diets are made up of UPFs. It's just not a useful category. It's not coherent. It's not informative. It's not consistent. These products now top consumers' lists of health concerns. Well, 72% of them are trying to avoid these products in their diets, and 79% feel they're a significant threat to public health. I mean, that is manufactured. Like, there are people cashing in on the hysteria and fanning the flames here because they want to sell their app that identifies ultra-processed foods, or their label that you can pay them a subscription fee and get the non-UPF label on your food. There's, of course, the livestock industries who are using this category to attack plant-based meat, even though it's healthier than meat, and trying to make the implication that it's unhealthy because it's in this category called UPF. It's such a game, and it's such a shame to see that it has caught on to such an extent. But when it comes to actually trying to regulate and define it and say, okay, this is, everyone thinks this is a big problem, we better sit down and do something about it. It turns out there's actually not a coherent, consistent definition of this. They've also been a target of the Trump administration, which blamed highly processed foods for diet-related disease in the new and highly criticised dietary guidelines. Meanwhile, a Maher-aligned non-profit paid $8 million to air a highly controversial Super Bowl ad attacking UPFs. It starred Mike Tyson, who has been convicted of rape, for which he served a 3-year term in prison and has a history of domestic violence. I mean, look, this is neither here nor there with respect to whether or not UPFs are healthy or whatever. I wonder who is putting $8 million behind this Super Bowl ad to attack UPFs. I wonder how much of that has come from the livestock industries. I actually looked into this a little bit, and there's this Make America Healthy Foundation, it's called, and it's not clear where their funding comes from. They don't have to disclose it. So it's set up as a charity. They don't have to disclose where their donations are coming from. So it can pretty much just disguise who's doing this. But we know, go back a few years, we know that the Centre for Consumer Freedom ran a Super Bowl ad attacking plant-based meat as ultra-processed back in 2019. And in that case, we were able to say directly, this was paid for by the Centre for Consumer Freedom. Their clients include meat industry lobbies. That's a straight A to B, right? You can draw the line. Now it's done via this non-profit who doesn't have to disclose who their donors are. Very shady, but very likely coming from the same place. So the UPF hysteria is still having the flames fanned over in the States. RFK Jr. has described UPFs as poison and previously pledged to remove them from school lunches. Congress is already considering a bill that would ban UPFs from being marketed to children and require them to carry front-of-pack warning labels. Yeah. On what basis? Using what definition? Like, you're going to have the same problem that the FDA's come up against here, where they go to do something about it from a regulatory perspective and discover there's no coherent definition, and therefore it's going to fall by the wayside. Like, this is not going to be a feasible thing to do. And it wouldn't be a helpful thing to do anyway. This is just such a backwards way of thinking about this. It's such a shame that people are falling for this on such a large scale. The Health Secretary recently said the FDA will act on a petition calling for the revocation of the GRAS status of certain UPFs. This is generally recognised as safe, where foods can say they're using techniques which are generally recognised as safe, and therefore they don't require additional safety assessments. However, an outright ban seems to be off the table. As Secretary Kennedy recently said, FDA's role is not to ban ultra-processed food, Prater said. Our role is to ensure that the food supply is safe, that labelling is truthful and not misleading, and that consumers have the information they need to make informed choices for themselves and their families. Yeah, I mean, this description of the FDA's role is obviously correct. There's nothing objectionable here. But all of the assumptions that go along with this and are underneath it are just massively misled. How are you going to make sure that labelling is not misleading when you're going to require UPFs to carry front-of-pack warning labels and have this category of foods, which is not even able to be coherently defined, be labelled as if they're cigarettes? Like, it doesn't make sense. He added that developing a definition is still a priority for the agency. Just because it's a tough challenge, it doesn't mean it's something that we should shy away from. Yeah, I mean, all right, let me know how that goes. Let me know how it goes trying to develop a coherent definition for ultra-processed foods. Because the people who have been writing about this have been trying to do that for close to a decade now, and they haven't had much luck yet. So you let me know how that goes. It's unclear when the FDA will release its eventual definition and what that would include. Yeah, quite. The obstacles it's facing are reflective of the complexity of UPF categorization and the importance of getting the definition right for food formulations and policies. Yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure about the analysis here. I would just say the whole concept is garbage. Throw it out. It's not like there is some correct definition. If only we can find it, then we're going to be able to ban all the unhealthy foods. No, this way of categorizing foods is ill-informed. Processing does not make food unhealthy. This is a dumb way of going about regulating foods. Abandon the whole project. Like, this is not worth doing. They haven't come up with a coherent definition because there's not a coherent definition for ultra-processed foods. Right. Excuse me for a moment. I got to go see what my dog's barking at. He's going crazy downstairs, so I'm going to go and quell his rage a little bit. Let me put on one of my videos so that there's something playing while I'm gone. I don't know what's going into him, but he's he's going crazy right now, so let me sort him out. If you've been paying attention to the media in the last year or so, you might be forgiven for thinking that beef is having a moment. Carnivore influencers are popping up on social media. Whole Foods named beef tallow as the top food trend of 2026, and RFK told cattle ranchers that beef is back on the menu. But these data points are not part of a beef renaissance. If you look closer, you'll see that they're actually the panicked screams of a dying industry trying to stay relevant. This is how beef got cooked. In almost every developed country, beef consumption is going down, not up. In the UK, beef consumption has fallen 36% since its peak in 1963. The number of UK slaughterhouses has fallen by over 90% since the 70s. It's a similar story in the US. Per capita beef consumption there has fallen 37% since its peak in 1976. In 2024, the number of cows in the US reached its lowest point since 1951, back when the population was half what it is today. It's no wonder that the first few months of 2026 have seen Tyson, JBS and Cargill all closing down major beef processing plants in the US. And the picture is the same across every major developed country. In Germany, beef consumption has fallen 43% since its peak in 1978. In Canada, beef consumption has fallen 51% since its peak in 1976. In Australia, beef consumption has fallen 67% since its peak in 1978. And in New Zealand, beef consumption is down 81% since its peak in 1976. Wherever you look in the developed world, beef consumption is falling off. One reason for the death knell of the beef industry is spiralling inflation. In the UK, year-on-year beef inflation was 27% in the year to October 2025, the highest increase since records began almost 40 years ago. In the US, the price of ground beef doubled between 2016 and 2025, and recent months have seen the steepest inflation yet. Again, it's a similar picture around the world, with beef prices up 10% across the EU in 2025, and up 18% in New Zealand. This is partly driven by the rising cost of feed. The last couple of years in particular have seen unprecedented drought affecting grass growth, as well as global conflicts pushing up the price of grain. When cows' feed gets more expensive, their meat gets more expensive, and that's exactly what we've seen. And there won't be a quick or easy fix to this situation either. The US calf crop is at a record low. Droughts a few years ago led to massive reductions in herd sizes, and building that back up takes time. In the meantime, there just aren't enough cows, which means that the price of beef will keep going up. Another reason for the death of the beef industry is the growing health consensus against red meat. In 2015, the World Health Organization classified red meat as carcinogenic based on over 800 scientific studies. Indeed, several high-quality dose-response meta-analyses have found that red meat not only increases the risk of several types of cancer, but also heart disease, stroke, obesity, diabetes, and all-cause mortality. And it's not just long-term observational data. Short-term randomized control trials consistently show that red meat increases body weight and cholesterol. Of course, there have been attempts to discredit the well-established health harms of red meat. In 2019, the NutriRex Consortium published a paper in the Annals of Internal Medicine concluding that adults should continue their current levels of consumption of red and processed meat. This was controversial because it contradicted the World Health Organization and basically every major dietary guideline in the world. This was a nuts part of this video, by the way. One of the things I really like about making videos, I do research on topics that I would never really look into otherwise. And I hadn't come across this particular story until I made this video, but this NutriRex thing is nuts. Like, they were just straight up being paid by the meat industry and didn't disclose it. Turns out that the papers had used a framework meant for evaluating drug trials, not nutritional epidemiology. You can't randomly assign people to eat beef or not for 20 years and see who gets a heart attack. So, am I muted? No. Am I? The approach they used would always downgrade epidemiological evidence baited to low certainty. That's not because the evidence is weak, it's because these scientists used a framework that was not designed I forgive you, Sabby. Nice to see you, by the way. For the question they were asking. When the Washington Post investigated the paper, they found that the authors had failed to disclose serious financial conflicts of interest with the beef industry. The lead author, Bradley Johnston, was at the time of writing the paper negotiating a six-figure salary tenured position at Texas A&M AgriLife, which receives millions in beef industry funding. Another author, Patrick Stover, failed to disclose that he was already the head of AgriLife and had personally overseen millions of dollars of beef industry-funded research in 2019 alone. Both authors failed to disclose these financial conflicts of interest, and the journal eventually issued a correction acknowledging this. But apparently RFK didn't get the memo. The most recent US dietary guidelines came out in January 2026, and they encouraged Americans to consume more red meat, not less. Is that because the science on red meat and health is contested and nuanced? No, it's because the administration ignored the majority of the recommendations made by the Scientific Advisory Committee. The Scientific Advisory Committee made... This was also nuts. I didn't know the details of this until I made this video. Like, really making videos is a really great reason to research these things in detail and get together the facts. This stuff is kind of spread out over the place. I'm thinking about making my video transcripts into written sources that are more able to be cited. Because you can't really cite a YouTube video in a lot of circumstances, but literally I could just copy paste the script that I wrote for this publish that, and then that would be able to be cited. It's got all the sources and like everything is correct, it's just the format. 56 recommendations, including that Americans should eat more plant protein and less red meat. This was based on the overwhelming scientific consensus that doing this would improve health outcomes. But of those 56 recommendations, RFK rejected 30 of them. It was later pointed out that 7 out of 9 members of the Scientific Review Committee had received funding from the livestock industry. Hundreds of health experts have since signed an open letter to RFK, calling the guidelines confusing and harmful. They argue that the guidelines contradict scientific evidence and are likely to make diet-related diseases worse, not better. But beef's not just a health concern, it's an environmental concern too. Beef cattle produce about 50 kilograms of CO2 equivalent for every 100 grams of protein. For the same amount of protein, peas produce just 0.4 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. That's more than 100 times more efficient. And it's not yeah, true, Bandit. That's a shame, but probably true. Just emissions is deforestation too. Up to 80% of deforestation in the Amazon is caused by cattle ranching. It's no wonder that the UK's Independent Climate Change Committee has recommended a 25% reduction in meat by 2040, and government policies are starting to make that happen. From 2030, Denmark will impose a tax of about $43 per tonne on carbon emissions from livestock, rising to about $108 per tonne by 2035. Meanwhile, the Netherlands straight up paid cattle farmers to leave the industry, and almost 2,000 of them applied for the deal. With growing urgency to address the climate crisis, other countries will surely follow suit. While all this has been going on, meat alternatives have been getting better and cheaper. In 2025, the global market for plant-based meat grew 8% to hey, this is what we were just looking at a minute ago. This is what I'm betting forward about. $6.6 billion. While the growth of plant-based meat had started to slow down in developed countries, we may be about to see that resurge, thanks to finally becoming cheaper than meat. This is especially the case for beef. In the UK, in the first quarter of 2026, plant-based mince was 29% cheaper than beef mince, and plant-based meatballs were 41% cheaper. That was just not the case a few short years ago. As this graph of mince prices in Tesco shows, there was a plant-based premium as recently as 2022. And before somebody comments saying that plant-based meat is ultra-processed food, I recommend we know about this. We know about this. And you watch this video discussing the evidence that plant-based meat is healthier than meat. So, is beef really back on the menu as RFK promised to the industry? Well, based on the data, definitely not. Spiraling inflation has driven beef to record high prices, making it more expensive than plant-based meat for the first time in history. Meanwhile, the scientific consensus that red meat is bad for the planet and bad for human health remains intact, despite meat industry hucksters trying to convince us otherwise. That's why beef consumption is falling in every developed country on Earth, and why it will continue to go down. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and share this with somebody who needs to know how beef got cooked. True, and based. You know, in many ways, my channel, I've been a bit of a victim of my own success with my recent videos. I had this video, the 5 reasons for vegans to be optimistic in 2026, that really hit and got 2K views. That's not a lot for the average YouTube video, right? But there's a lot by my standards. This is outperforming everything else I was posting. And then since then, this beef one had 350 something. So I'm a bit paralyzed. I'm like, how can I replicate the success of the 5 reasons video? I've got some ideas, but I haven't really executed on any of them. So, you know, there was a time when I was putting out loads and loads of videos, one after the other. A lot of these are clips from stream, but even the original edited videos, there was a time when I was putting out a lot of them. And it's kind of fallen off in more recent times, which is a shame. I gotta just get it together and commit to making more of these. I've got some ideas that I can action. But there you go, that's how beef got cooked. I think beef is like, it's going to be done so soon. It's really, really not feasible. Things are moving in the right direction with that. So we've got another article here about ultra-processed foods. This is from The Atlantic. It's kind of a bit of a longer read, and I think it's a similar conclusion to the Green Queen one we just read. So, you know, maybe I'll save this, because I've got another thing that I want to get into. And that is this Grilled article, Inside Big Ag's Plot to Kill the EU Green Deal. Documents from inside Europe's most powerful farming lobby reveal plans to block efforts to cut pesticide use and reduce factory farm pollution. So let's get into this. I just want us all to reflect on the people whose job this is. Like, there are people who get up each day, brush their teeth, get ready, go to work, and their job is to lobby against environmental regulations so that we can keep doing factory farming. And what kind of a person that is, and what that job does to a person's own soul and psyche. Like, they know their job is to be dishonest in the service of supporting factory farming. The details of this are going to make you mad. So, you know, we've done the good news. We've done the plant-based hopium for today. We've made a $100 bet with Paul Wood, and we'll keep an eye on LinkedIn, see if we get any notifications there. So this is now going to be the losing our faith in humanity part of the stream. All right. So good luck. Let's get into it. As Europeans went to the polls in June 2024, Europe's most powerful farming lobby had settled on a simple demand: repeal the Green Deal. This message, discussed in a high-level industry meeting on the eve of the vote, was the culmination of a years-long campaign to dismantle the most ambitious environmental effort ever pursued by the European Union. Now, dozens of documents from inside COPA-COGECA, the Federation of European Farming Interests, reveal how the group undermined and hollowed out the EU's green farming commitments one by one. The archive of meeting notes obtained by Grilled, a new investigative journalism project, starts in January 2021, just months after the EU leaders unveiled their Farm to Fork strategy, the agricultural centrepiece of the European Green Deal. In that strategy, EU officials promised to cut pesticide use, restore ecosystems, reduce emissions, and improve the lives of farmed animals. 5 years later, that agenda was all but abandoned. This is the story of COPA-COGECA's pushback. The files captured the organisation receiving support from EU commissioners in blocking parts of the EU effort to beat cancer, pressuring ministers to weaken protections for wild animals, securing emissions exemptions for factory farms, and prolonging the use of cages for livestock. Again, I just want you to think about the people doing this job. Like, oh, I've got a meeting today later with an EU minister, hoping to prolong the use of cages in animal farming. That's my job. That's what I'm up to today. Like, who fucking marries these people? Who associates with these people? Who wants anything to do with people who have sold their souls to such an extent and are doing evil on a professional level? It boils my blood to think about these people. Less than a year after Farm to Fork landed, representatives of the group's nearly 70 member organisations met over Zoom for COPA-COGECA's Presidium, held just a few times a year. There, Pekka Pressonen, the then Secretary-General, laid the groundwork for the campaign to follow. Yeah, that's about what I expect them to look like. Miserable, hollowed out suit. literally evil man. His job is to undermine regulation, which is meant to protect us from pollution and keep animals out of cages. This guy gets out of bed and says, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. They would defend controversial animal products like foie gras and fur, he told the board, in the same way as tobacco. They are consciously evil. Like there's a world in which you can extend some charitability and say, you know, well, these people really do believe in what they're doing, and maybe they genuinely think that they're protecting food security, and maybe they really think that it's about, you know, there are environmental benefits to livestock systems. No. When the meeting notes get leaked from these organizations, they're like, hey, we're going to do what the tobacco industry did. We're going to make sure we can keep having foie gras. It is evil. If anything is evil, this is it. Copa Cogeca occupies a unique position in European politics. Representing farming unions and agricultural cooperatives across the continent, the organisation claims to speak for 22 million farmers. The group has been accused, however, of supporting the interests of industrial producers at the expense of smaller farmers. Personen, who led the organisation for 17 years, told Politico in 2023 that it was not realistic to expect small-scale farming to survive. The market just doesn't reward this. Yeah, this is... I don't want to just keep reiterating, but, like, this is a fucking, like, empty, hollow, evil man. A demon whose job it is to promote factory farming. Like, literally, there's a version where you can say, okay, they think it's about food security, they're defending small farmers, etc., etc. No, it's utterly cynical. This man's just outright saying, nah, this is about factory farming. The market just doesn't reward small-scale farming. We're going to put on the website and say to politicians, hey, we represent the 22 million farmers across Europe. They don't. They just represent the factory farms. And they say it. They're not hiding it. The Federation is well known for opposing environmental regulation and is especially strong in its advocacy for meat, even as evidence mounts that raising livestock is a leading cause of water pollution, a key driver of global deforestation, and one of the biggest sources of climate warming emissions. The tranche of internal meeting minutes obtained by Grilled were not intended for the public. They were a rare look at the inner workings of one of the most powerful agricultural groups in Europe. The files were not written in English. Grilled used AI translation tools with key extracts verified by a native speaker. They depict an organisation with extraordinary access embedded in the EU's political machinery. The files show Copa Cogeca is capable of changing laws before they're even proposed, of unravelling policies that have been in place for decades, of rallying both senior figures in the Commission and farmers on the streets. Dilara Burkhardt, a German MEP and member of the European Parliament's Environment Committee, said the documents showed a lobby group with a clear objective. She told Grilled, Big Agri's interest is not in simplifying the Green Deal, it wants to dismantle it. The lobbying playbook, delay and opportunism. Over the course of the Green Deal negotiations, Copa Cogeca utilised a suite of strategies to achieve its aims, many of which required an extraordinary level of institutional access. Copa, the documents show, placed or tried placing its representatives on advisory groups for sustainable food systems, carbon removals, food security, animal welfare, veterinary medicines, and civil dialogue. Commissioners Janusz Wojciechowski and Valdis Dombrovskis spoke at the group's own governance meetings, as did multiple Commission Directors General, including the heads of DG Agri and DG Klima, as well as the parliamentary rapporteurs for pesticides and meat promotion. This is a bit of ropium, really. Like, the factory farm lobby is so deeply embedded with the EU politicians. It's not surprising that you get these outrageous things like cultivated meat is no longer allowed to use meat terms. I hope that history remembers these people. Like, they're in the flow of it now. They're doing their lobbying now. They're they're doing their thing. This is their job. I really hope that these people are remembered by history as evil. And one of the reasons why I started doing YouTube is because I want to be on the record about this stuff. I want there to be, for future historians to know that there's video and writings of people saying, this is fucked up, this is not good enough. I want it to be known that I don't accept this. And I want to hold the individuals who are doing it responsible and accountable. I really hope that their legacy is one of shame and that their descendants are ashamed. Because again, this is evil. Several of these figures are described in the documents as supporting COPA's position in behind-the-scenes talks. The organisation explicitly sought to cultivate high-level allies to counter Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans, the figurehead for the Green Deal. Thanks in part to its role in Europe's policy infrastructure, Copa Cogeca could use delay tactics to slow the lawmaking process, declaring at one point it would force the Commission to abandon its objectives on reducing pesticide use by delaying the legislation till the election. The proposal was withdrawn just months before the vote. Burkhardt said the documents raise questions that go beyond this investigation. The issue is not that interest groups lobby, that is part of democracy, she said. The problem is that a small number of powerful lobby organisations are apparently able to secure disproportionate access and influence in EU policymaking at the expense of Europe's long-term interests in sustainability, food security and resilience. Yeah, there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot at play. Like, we're not making this shit up about climate change and food security and sustainability and pollution, all the things that we talk about, the reasons for reducing the extent of animal farming. This is real stuff. These are real consequences that are going to come because this small number of people cynically lobby and influence and shape laws before they can be voted on and are holding the whole system to ransom. And to what end? Do they not want a planet to live on? Do they not care that this is completely unsustainable? What they're doing is driving climate change, is driving heat waves, is driving antibiotic resistance. There are billions of animals caged right now because of the actions of these small number of fucking men in suits. It's actually disgraceful. It's actually embarrassing that this is allowed to happen. And that there are so many spineless politicians that let this happen. They know what's happening. They know what's going on here. And they let it happen. That's just the way things are. It's shameful. It's embarrassing. One of COPA's most effective delay tactics used across multiple issues was commissioning private impact assessments, then strategically releasing them to counter or replace the Commission's own. In 2021, for example, the group ran its own analysis on the move to cage-free livestock farming, but held it unpublished for 2 years, only sharing with the Commission once its own assessment failed regulatory scrutiny. Meeting minutes suggest that the COPA-funded study was popular with the Commission, and they promised to use it. Oh yeah, I didn't see any issues with that. The big factory farming lobby has done an assessment of cages in livestock farming. Yeah, that seems legit. That seems like something that should be trusted and used in policy making. Hey, where did this assessment of cages in livestock farming come from? Oh, it came from that massive factory farm lobby. Oh yeah, that seems legit. These European policymakers are either cynical or stupid. Possibly both. This strategic opportunism was also demonstrated in 2022 when war broke out in Ukraine. At a presidium 2 months after the Russian invasion, COPA members argued that the conflict should spell the end of the EU's sustainability drive. The war in Ukraine changes everything, the Austrian delegate is recorded as saying. Rethink farm to fork and biodiversity strategy. The Irish delegate reportedly echoed that view, suggesting that farm to fork could cause a second humanitarian crisis. Like, these guys are going to cause the humanitarian crisis. I want this to be super clear. The heat waves that are going across Europe now are in no small part the fault of these few people who are cynically lobbying for more factory farming, even though they know that it's unsustainable, they know that it's driving climate change, but they're making too much money to give a shit. Do they not want a planet to live on? A spokesperson for the EU Commission told Grilled, while others may seek to influence the debate, our decisions are taken on Europe's terms, under Europe's rules and in the European market. Yeah, I don't think we can really say that with any confidence. Here's the Become a Beefitarian campaign, funded by EU taxpayers, by the way. It's unbelievable the amount that they've been able to influence things. This is largely why policy is so far behind science on food security, on food systems and their impacts on the environment and public health. But we look at so much policy and go, like, why is that the policy? Why are so many of our taxes going directly to livestock farming when we know that it's destroying the planet and exacerbating antibiotic resistance and causing all sorts of other public health problems? Why are we giving money directly to the production of foods when we know that it gives you cancer and heart disease? Like, this is why. Copa Cogeca is why. Here we're going to read about how they have undermined cancer science. Could be a laugh. Become a Beefitarian. That was the slogan of a notorious 2020 ad campaign funded by the European Union. It sparked outcry among NGOs over its direction of EU funds toward promoting products that clash with the bloc's own environmental and public health goals, such as meat and alcohol. One analysis found the EU's agricultural promotion programme had spent €252 million over 4 years advertising meat and dairy products, making up a third of its budget. This is outrageous. Like, what a misappropriation of public money. That's your taxes. If you live in the EU, that's your taxes that are paying for this. Over a third of the EU agricultural programme was spent promoting meat and dairy. We know there is such an urgent need to reduce the number of livestock. We know that methane is driving climate change and is causing these heat waves across Europe. People are dying. People are dying as a direct result of this. And these cynical lobbyists just don't care. They just don't care. They've got blood on their hands and they just don't care. It's outrageous that this is allowed. When, as part of the Commission's Beating Cancer plan, the programme was updated in 2021 to make it harder to claim EU funds for promoting red and processed meat and alcohol, it was taken very seriously by Copa Cogeca. Yeah, I bet it was. We're not talking here only about promotion policy, meeting notes from January 2022 read, because if meat is treated in this way there, it will spread to other policies as well. Yeah, they're playing this very high press, this lobbying group, after they had had €250 million of taxpayers' money to promote meat and dairy. The rules were changed, and the EU said, maybe we don't want to be spending $250 million of taxpayers' money, of taxpayers' money, on promoting these products that we know cause cancer. And the lobbyists have a meeting and say, well, we need to come down hard on this. Because if they start restricting funds for promoting meat and dairy, this is going to spread to other policy areas as well. So we need to come down hard on this. It's absolutely outrageous. It's absolutely cynical. It turns my stomach thinking about these people. In the same meeting, COPA described mobilising support for Agricultural Commissioner Wojciechowski, who opposed the policy change. Commissioners Dombrovskis, Britton and McGuinness were supportive, especially Dombrovskis, the notes read. On the member state side, the ball is currently in your hands. Lobby, Personen told the meeting, adding, if member states apply pressure before the decision is made, they will choose to keep meat and alcohol in. The documents show Copa-Cogeca working in coordination with the alcohol industry, rallying MEPs to the cause. The measures were softened afterwards, with official EU notes remarking the proposal to drop meat promotion funding had provoked substantial controversy and opposition. COPA's own internal records were explicit. This was the result of successful lobbying, and that members' efforts were of great benefit. What cowards these policymakers were. They were like, hey, should we stop giving 250 million euros of taxpayers' money to the promotion of products that we know cause cancer? The lobbies kick up a fuss and they say, oh, it's provoked too much controversy. Oh, there's too much opposition. We can't do this now. What cowards? What are they for? They're just doing the will of the powerful here. This is outrageous. It's so cynical. It's so disgusting. The following year, in spring 2024, the proposal was removed entirely, and COPA concluded lobbying has borne fruit. Application period extended and budget increased. Oh, great. So there's actually going to be even more budget for promoting cancer-causing meat now because the lobby's kicked up a fuss. This is absolutely sickening from this group. Though protecting and ultimately growing the meat promotion budget was a key focus in this period, COPA was also aggressive at preventing similar support for alternative proteins. The documents show COPA blocked plant-based nutrition from the Farm to Fork Code of Conduct, which set out the principles of the EU's food sustainability agenda. They also mobilised ministers to oppose an application for cultivated foie gras submitted by the French startup Gourmet before the Commission had even assessed the file. This is sickening. This is fucked up. These factory farm lobbies are contacting ministers and saying, oh, you need to reject this application. Like, that's not any scientific basis. This is just pure lobbying and interests. This is fucked up. Alex Holst, Deputy Head of Policy at the Good Food Institute Europe, said the Gourmet episode was part of a wider pattern. It's concerning to learn that ministers were being lobbied over a regulatory application before EFSA had even conducted its review of the evidence, he said. This fits with the pattern of misinformation being weaponised against plant-based foods and cultivated meat across Europe. Yeah, this is one of the good ones. This is EU Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans was leading the Green Deal initiative. So here's a guy who was pushing to make things better, restrict pesticide use, come down on factory farming pollution, make the EU's food system actually work for small farmers and for consumers and for the planet and for animals. But he was lobbied to hell by the factory farming groups. Copa-Cogeca. Absolutely shameful. How do these people sleep at night, seriously? How do they think about their impact on the world and their interactions with the world? It's absolutely shameful. Stop Timmermans taking on the Green Deal chief. Frans Timmermans, the Dutch socialist who became the political face of the European Green Deal, appears throughout the Copa-Cogeca archive as the organisation's central adversary, a figure who it sought to isolate and outmaneuver. As early as July 2021, COPA officials were clear about their objective. It is necessary to find a commissioner who would stand up to Timmermans in the college. What followed was an engineered factional battle inside the commission itself. When Timmermans threatened to initiate his own consultation on the meat promotion policy, a process unpopular with COPA, the organisation relied on sympathetic commissioners to block it. Dombrovskis, Hahn and Bee have agreed to press for consultations to begin, COPA officials reported. When the resulting deadlock left COPA's preferred status quo intact, the internal assessment was frank. In some respects, it is good that the proposal is blocked, as the current policy suits us. By 2023, COPA was working to further consolidate its advantage. The Agriculture Commissioner is relatively isolated in his opinion on the Sustainable Food Systems Framework, one note says. COPA is trying to bring in more support from von der Leyen and Dombrovskis' cabinets. The framework never came. Timmermans resigned from the Commission in August 2023 to lead the Dutch Labour Party into national elections. His departure removed the Green Deal's most committed champion at a critical moment. If COPA had spent years searching for commissioners to stand up to Timmermans, by late 2024 it found itself in an even more advantageous situation. Timmermans was gone, and the new Agriculture Commissioner, Christoph Hansen, told COPA's Presidium that farms are the solution, not the problem, and there is no advantage in taxing agricultural emissions, and that Europe needed fewer laws. COPA's president had one response: "You have started very well." Crossing the threshold, weakening factory farm pollution rules. God, this is really raising my blood pressure reading about this. It's so cynical. In 2022, the European Commission proposed expanding its industrial emissions rules to cover more large livestock farms, meaning some intensive animal operations would face the same pollution permitting as factories and power plants for the first time. At first, it was even backed by Agriculture Commissioner Wojciechowski, and a long-time COPA ally, who has met with hostility when he addressed the organisation's Presidium in April 2021. 100,000 birds on a farm is not agriculture, it is industry, he said. 2 years later, however, he told the same group he was against many aspects of the proposal. COPA's campaign was so effective, it raised the threshold for what counts as a factory farm before the text was made public. An internal memo from April 2022 claimed early-stage lobbying has paid off. The Secretariat sent letters to various Commission presidents and commissioners, and as a result, the threshold was changed from the original planned 100 LSU livestock units to 150 LSU. An EU analysis leaked to French outlet Context found the higher threshold would reduce the public health benefits by €1.8 billion a year. It was only the beginning. COPA combined parliamentary lobbying, media campaigns, and organised farm visits to make its case against the law. Policymakers were taken to Wallonia to be shown pig farms, beef operations, and carbon sequestration projects. Brochures were printed. Letters were sent to permanent representations ahead of critical council votes. Swift lobbying is needed, the group concluded in September 2022. We call for rethinking of the threshold limits. I really fucking hope that these people suffer as a result of the consequences that they're bringing about. I hope that the people in Copa-Cogeca suffer in the heat waves. I hope that they have antibiotic-resistant diseases that could have been cured were it not for their livestock lobbying. This will happen eventually. Like, they are bringing about the very real, very bad outcomes for society that we are always warning about and talking about, and they are just cynically lobbying against it. These are the people responsible for factory farming going on at the scale that it is in Europe. As the final decision approached, the campaign moved to the streets. COPA helped organise a flash protest outside the European Parliament in Strasbourg on the day of the plenary vote, with a large screen streaming the result live as tractors and invited MEPs gathered outside. The final directive excluded cattle entirely and set the threshold significantly higher than originally proposed. So here's the first proposal to set the limits on these types of livestock farms that was meant to be 100 cows, 333 pigs, or 7,200 broiler chickens. And eventually in the final version, it was more than triple the amount of pigs at 1,100. It was more than 5 times the amount of chickens at 40,000 rather than the original proposed 7,200. And cattle were just excluded completely. So this is totally watered down, totally undermined by livestock lobbyists. It's sickening. It's really, really sickening. I really hope these people pay the price. For each animal that we care about helping, these guys are harming by the thousands, by the millions. It's fucked up. It's really fucking terrible. There was political will and momentum to do something about this, to crack down on factory farming. And it was absolutely derailed by these lobbyists. It's fucked up and it's sick. Marco Contiero, Agricultural Policy Director at Greenpeace EU, said the campaign showed who Kepa truly represents. By campaigning so aggressively against the inclusion of the largest cattle farms in the Industrial Emissions Directive, despite the fact that the measure would have covered little more than 1% of Europe's cattle farms, Kepa has revealed whose interests it truly prioritises, he said. Rather than standing up for the vast majority of Europe's small and medium-sized family farmers, it has chosen to shield a small number of highly industrialised operators responsible for a disproportionate share of pollution. Animal welfare, political warfare, prolonging the cage age. Well, here we go, guys. This is where the really fucking bad stuff is. We were meant to have ended the cage age in Europe by the end of 2023, and we still have not. And now we're going to see why and how this has been undermined by livestock lobbyists. The petition to end the cage age for farm animals was one of the most successful European citizens' initiatives ever launched, with more than 1.4 million signatures. The Commission responded publicly by committing to propose legislation to phase out all cage systems by the end of 2023, with a view to banning them entirely by 2027. But regulators were already playing catch-up to Kepa. As early as February 2021, months before the petition had reached its target, Kepa officials had decided to get ahead of the Commission. If we make proposals now, we have more room to manoeuvre on financing and transition periods. As the Commission readied its June 2021 commitment to phase out all cage systems, Kepa's internal discussions were revealing. At a meeting weeks before the announcement, a Kepa official was candid about the prospect of ending cages. If the Commission offers support, we could give up cages tomorrow. In contrast, Kepa's lobbying position was that a transition from chicken cages could take up to 15 years. So in private, they were saying, yeah, this is feasible, we could do this tomorrow. But in public and in lobbying, they were saying, no, this is going to take 15 years. This is going to take years, because there's no way that we can do it this quickly. Even though behind closed doors, they knew they were lying. They knew they were lying. We must not extend these people an ounce of charity. They are cynical to the core. They are lying in their lobbying with clear evidence now. This is clear evidence that they are just lying in order to prolong the time that animals spend in cages. Gabriela Kubikova, Legislative Advocacy Manager at the European Institute for Animal Law and Policy, said Kepa's approach was a smokescreen to justify delays in implementation. Long transition periods, she argued, do not guarantee timely compliance. Extending timelines tends to postpone change as opposed to achieving effective transition in farming practices. Yeah. I mean, yeah. They're hoping this goes away completely. Ideally, they just want to carry on keeping animals in cages forever. These people want animals to be caged forever. The end of the cage age has still not arrived. The Citizens Committee behind the petition has since taken the Commission to the Court of Justice for failing to act on its commitment. The European Commission is expected to announce plans to phase out cages for laying hens by the end of 2026, years after its original commitment. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. The factory farm lobbies are going to be active on this, so we'll see. The pesticide play. How Copa killed the EU's pesticide law. The pledge to cut pesticide use in half was perhaps the central policy of the Farm to Fork strategy and one of its most controversial. The documents show how Copa-Cogeca planned to deliberately delay setting the pesticide reduction goal. At a meeting in September 2022, officials discussed keeping the file unresolved until the EU elections 2 years later, after which there would be a new parliament and commission less likely to pursue it. Perhaps it is worth delaying until then. While they threw sand in the gears of the sustainable use of pesticides regulation, Copa also fought to keep controversial pesticides on the market. Pressurised permanent representation to support, one 2022 document instructed, ahead of a vote on extending the licence for glyphosate, which has the World Health Organization's cancer body classified as probably carcinogenic. The glyphosate licence was renewed for 10 years in 2023 after member states twice failed to reach a decision, with the Commission ultimately approving it unilaterally. That's great. That's great. So they're also lobbying for keeping using probably carcinogenic pesticides in the EU. That's fantastic. Like, are they not eating this same food? Are they not just shooting themselves in the foot completely by doing this? So fucked up, man. So fucking horrible, these people. The organisation also worked to shape the narrative around neonicotinoids, which are harmful to pollinators. A document produced in response to the Save the Bees initiative, which gathered more than 1 million signatures, showed actions farmers were already taking, illustrating how stricter pesticide controls were not needed. It was described internally as a good lobbying tool, though one delegate warned it gave the false impression farmers could address pollinator decline without EU funding. Yeah, so one person says, oh, essentially this is not going far enough. We should actually ask them for money. We should actually ask them, we want to keep being able to keep on using all the pesticides that we want, but we should actually ask them for money as well. Let's get a bit more money from these European taxpayers, why not? The pesticide reduction target was formally withdrawn by the Commission in February 2024, just months before the European elections Copa had been counting on. We're going on a wolf hunt, unravelling the Habitats Directive. In 2021, Copa-Cogeca officials were pessimistic about their chances of formally downgrading protections for the wolf. That would mean altering the Habitats Directive, the foundational piece of EU nature law that protected species across the continent for 30 years. Hoping for changes to the Habitats Directive is probably naive, one internal document conceded. They were wrong to doubt themselves. The archive shows Copa-Cogeca coordinating with member states and allied organisations around what it called large carnivore campaigns. It wrote to governments, organised pressure events with MEPs and scientists, and built coalitions with hunting and landowner groups aimed at downgrading wolf protections under the Habitats Directive. By September 2024, the Presidium declared success. A major lobbying victory. The fight is over. Ariel Brunner, head of EU policy at BirdLife International, said the wolf decision was only the beginning. The lowering of wolf protection in Europe does nothing to solve the problems of livestock farmers, he said, but it is a first victory in the farm lobby's ideological crusade to dismantle EU nature conservation and wider environmental protection legislation. We're now facing a full-blown attack on the EU nature legislation, as well as on laws protecting water and limiting the misuse of pesticides. The implications go beyond wolves. A subsequent document discussing what should now be amended in the directive asked members to send examples of your needs, which animals and birds should be added to the annex. Late last year, the Commission began a stress test of the entire directive, potentially setting the stage for a historic environmental rollback. Repeal the Green Deal. The farmer protests that swept Europe in late 2023 and early 2024, tractors on the motorway, manure sprayed at EU buildings, fires in central Brussels, are often described as a spontaneous eruption of rural anger. The violence, which COPA was careful to distance itself from, posed problems for the group. Its internal minutes noted that farmers were increasingly being seen as conservative, populist, nationalist, and far-right. Another document recorded neutrally that some media suspect Russian money and support aimed at influencing the European Parliament elections. Still, anger on the streets was an opportunity to extract concessions, and by the time of the EU-wide elections in June, COPA had distilled its demands to just 4 words: repeal the Green Deal. While the Green Deal was never formally scrapped, the right-wing European People's Party won a large majority on a platform promising to roll back environmental regulation. The simplification drive, which began the following year and continues to this day, is gutting what remains of the farming sustainability agenda. The EU's new livestock strategy, released last week, shows how far COPA's campaigning has come. Energy on cutting cattle emissions has been redirected towards recalculating them. Efforts to curb meat eating have been replaced by measures to increase its production. We must move beyond polarising debates, Commissioner Hansen said at its presentation. COPA GOGECA was pleased. After years in which livestock was too often portrayed as a part of the problem, it said in response, the Commission now recognises its contribution and addressed issues that the farming sector has been calling for over many years. COPA GOGECA declined to comment for this story. Well, I did say that the good news was done. This is absolutely cynical and disgusting. And all of the superlatives, I had not read this before. I didn't know the details of a lot of these things. This one lobbying group has completely undermined so much proposed environmental regulation. It secured millions of your money, taxpayers' money, to promote meat and dairy. And it's encouraged the EU to just move away from all of its restrictions on factory farming and meat and dairy production, wildlife protection. It's openly lying. It's been revealed by this document leak that they are just lying in their policy lobbying. And they are responsible for millions of animals staying in cages. It's fucked up. And if you want to do something about it, you can. Vegan 2.0 is the answer to this. We need to be active. We need to be supporting the organizations that oppose this kind of stuff, that are pushing for more progressive regulations, more support for alternative proteins, more restrictions on factory farms. Our opposition here is very powerful, and it is on us to oppose this. And you can do it. You can give more, share more, and do more to help fight back against this. If this has value, this reporting of these leaked documents from COPA GOGECA and the farming lobbies, it is to motivate us. Let this not be in vain. All of this shit has gone down and it's going to keep on happening. But it's on us to push back on it. So if this made you angry, And my God, it made me angry. Then look into Vegan 2.0. Find the links in this video description for where you can give more, share more, and do more to help animals. And spread the word. If people get involved and do this, we can counter this. I enjoy streaming, but ultimately I'm not doing this for fun. I'm not doing this for views or for a laugh. I'm doing this because I believe that if I reach and motivate just a few people to do effective things to help animals, then we stand a chance of fighting back against this. But it only happens if we make it happen. It only happens if we are motivated to give more, share more, and do more to help animals and to spread the word to have other people doing the same stuff. Our enemies here are very powerful and influential and well organized. But we give a shit and we can do this. I'm going to go and donate to Project Slingshot right now. I'm going to donate £100 right now to the big campaign that is exposing factory farm cruelty here in the UK. These campaigns need us. The other side has its funding from the factory farms, right? That is what's funding these lobbies, the factory farm proceeds. The proceeds from these farms where animals are caged and the slaughterhouses where they're put to death. Let me not dox my card details here. Oh, they've sent me a code to my mobile. Okay. If this kind of reporting serves any positive purpose, it's to motivate people like us to do something to fight back. And I just really hope that A, you guys join me in funding the fight back, because we need it. It's on us to do this. I hope you join me in giving more, sharing more, and doing more. Find the links in the video description to do that. It is on us to try, if anyone is going to overcome this and fight back against these disgusting factory farm lobbies, it's people like us. So get motivated. I just gave £100 to Project Slingshot. I recommend giving to animal charity evaluators. I recommend the Humane League's Fast Action Network, Communities Against Factory Farming. Find all the links in the video description. We can fight back against this. It's on us to do it. It really is. The other side is very influential and is shameless in how they approach this. These leaked notes from Kopiko Gecko have really shown that. If it was ever in doubt, they're absolutely cynical and shameless. And they better hope that there's no cosmic justice or karma or hell. Because if there is, that's where these people are going. I really hope there are bad consequences for these people. They name here the guy who led this lobby for 17 years. This is the guy. And he's now appointed permanent secretary in Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Finland. I hope that these people get what they deserve. The measure you give will be the measure you get back. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I hope so, Bandit. Yeah, let this be motivation to go and do shit. Okay? action.thehumaneleague.org if you want to catch up with Tristan King on the online activism. Animalcharityevaluators.org if you want to give to the most impactful animal charities. And share stuff. For God's sake, share stuff on social media. Share my channel. Share this stream. Share this article. I'll put the link to this article in chat. I mean, I don't know how many people will read a longish article like this. But perhaps I'll make a video about this. If you do want to share something from my channel, I recommend sharing my video called Vegan 2.0 in 5 minutes. Because that is the video that I've made to be sort of optimally shareable, to describe the philosophy in quick, absorbable form. I might re-record this now. I've got a better camera now. This is on my old camera, so I might re-record a lot of my old videos. Hey, look, this one's on 1.3k views. That's not doing too badly. But this is the video of mine that I recommend sharing. There's the link to that Grilled article. That was some grim reading. That was not enjoyable. That raised my blood pressure considerably and, knocked years off my life. But it will be worth it if it motivates you guys to do bits. We're only half a dozen people in a live stream right now, but we need to give more, share more, and do more to fight back against these cynical fucking lobbyists who lie to keep animals in cages and to ensure that climate change is accelerated, antibiotic resistance is accelerated, pollution is worsened. It's just despicable. I really hope that the individuals involved get what they deserve. I really do. And I hope that you will get what you deserve if you join the fight back. If there is any kind of cosmic karma keeping score for the good people and the bad people, then the people we've just been reading about are going straight to hell. And the people who are giving what they can to effective charities and trying to spread the word even when it's not popular, and making the effort and going and doing online activism until they end up with 1,000 points on the Fast Action Network like my man Tristan King. Man, I hope there's a reward for these people in the afterlife. There are people whose life is objectively making the world a worse place, decreasing utility. People like this guy who his job and his life's work is to extend the life of factory farming. I hope there's some sort of cosmic punishment for these people. And I hope there are cosmic rewards for you guys who are joining the fight back against it. Get motivated. If this stuff has pissed you off, then that is a good sign that you are a good person, you have got a heart, and you are responding appropriately. We desperately need more people to get pissed off about this stuff to the extent that they act. And when they say, what can I do? Send them the Vegan 2.0 in 5 minutes, okay? Really simple stuff, really low cost stuff, low effort stuff ultimately. This stuff is a big middle finger to the factory farm lobbies. I think I'm going to have to make a video about this because it's just outrageous. Not as many people will read all of this as they should. But if I can condense this into a punchy video that kind of makes the main points and then calls to action for people to do something about it, we can make some good come of this. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I'm going to leave it there for tonight. I really appreciate you tuning in and staying with me through the grim stuff that we've been talking about. And hey, it wasn't all bad, okay? Let's not forget about the good news from the beginning of the stream. We are seeing increases in sales of plant-based meat. As those prices continue to come down, demand is continuing to go up. And the likes of Kopikugeka are terrified. They do not want this to happen. They want those animals in cages forever. And it's not going to happen because people like us are pushing this forward. The meat industry will collapse. Yes, Tristan. It's our job to accelerate it, all right? And I just hope that history remembers these people the way that it should. If there's any justice, history will remember these people as evil. This guy has done more to harm animals than almost anyone else in the world. So look, it's not all doom and gloom. There's signs of positivity. Plant-based meat's getting cheaper. Plant-based meat sales are back on the up. Let's see if we've got any comeback from Paul Wood for my proposed bet. No, not yet, unfortunately. I'll keep you and the guys in the loop on that. Check out the video description for links on what you can do to help accelerate the downfall of factory farming. God knows that we need as many people as we can, doing as much as we can to help push this forward and bring this to an end. You can also find a link to the Discord server there if you want to be connected to other people on this same mission. There's, I think, almost 100 people in my Discord server now. There's a lot of lively debate in there, people sharing resources and recommendations for charities and things that are going to help us move things in the right direction. And God knows we need it. So let's keep building the community. Let's keep giving more, sharing more, and doing more. I really would love you guys to bring more people into the community as well. If you can share my stuff so that more people hear about this and more people find the ways that they can contribute to the solutions, then that's really, really positive. And I think I will make a video about this lobbying stuff, this lobbying group leaks, because it's outrageous, honestly. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm going to leave it there. I really appreciate you guys watching, and it warms my heart to know that there are people who care about this and who want good things for animals and who want to accelerate the end of factory farming. There's an awful lot of people who don't care, who don't think about it. And then there's a small number of people who cynically lie and lobby and influence to keep more animals in cages for longer. We need more people on our team, guys. So I really, really appreciate you all being here with me. I appreciate you sticking here with me through the grim reading about the factory farm lobbies. And we're going to push us in the right direction. Thank you so much for watching. I will stream again soon. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Bandit. I really appreciate you guys. And I will see you guys next stream. All right. Take care.